this is our discussion today. So it's sustainability in the wake of COVID-19, perspective of business, higher education, utility management, and waste management. We have our partners who were able to help us put this webinar together. So we have CFS, as Committee on Physical Studies at the University of Nairobi. We have KEPSA, which is Kenya Private Sector Alliance. It's an apex body of all private sector institutions in Kenya, and has its membership both on business member organizations and corporates. They also deal with advocacy and influence of policy. And also we have the University of Nairobi. Most people call it the University of Nairobi. Of course, we had the privilege of having Professor Waris, Mary, and Guinevere facilitate this webinar. We also have Sustainable Inclusive Business, which is a knowledge center at KEPSA, Kenya Private Sector Alliance. We also have Oxfam, which is an international NGO. And we also have Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, which we normally refer to as FES, and the Open Society Initiative of East Africa. So we want to appreciate all our partners that were able to help us put this together. Our panelists, of course, we have Professor Ndemo, who will be handling a business. I just decided to use the picture that he had posted earlier, I think earlier this month, where he was talking about the shift of working from home. There, Professor Ndemo has joined us. Karibu sana. So I was saying that Professor Ndemo will be joining us, and he has just joined us. So Professor Ndemo, ideally, he is a professor at the University of Nairobi, and he is a professor of entrepreneurship. His research centers on the link between ICT and small and medium enterprises, with emphasis on ICT influencing economy development in Africa. Professor Ndemo chaired the Kenya Distributed Ledgers and Artificial Intelligence Task Force that developed the country's roadmap for digital transformation. He is an advisor and board member of several organizations, including Safaricom, telecommunications in Africa, and also Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, expert panel for blockchain, Foundation Research ICT Africa, that is based in South Africa. Professor Ndemo was also a permanent secretary of Kenya Ministry of Information and Communication, where he was credited for facilitating many transformative ICT projects. He's a member of the Global Learning Council, a member of the Global Blockchain Council, and a senior advisor at the UN Global Pulse and UNCDF Better Than Cash Alliance. He is an open evangelist and dedicated to simplification of data for ordinary citizens. So we are privileged to have you, Professor Ndemo, joining us to the webinar. The second panelist in our discussion today is Engineer Martha. So Engineer Martha is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Kenya Private Sector Alliance, which of course I mentioned is a private sector apex and umbrella body that brings together both business community in a single voice to engage and influence public policy for an enabling business environment. She is a seasoned engineer with a wealth of experience in both the public and private sectors. Martha has a track record of contributing to the overall growth strategy of organizations. She is highly accomplished in advocacy, coordination of project activities, stakeholder management, public policy formulation, private sector sustainable development, energy, climate change, green growth, and government relations. She has co-chaired 2 national task forces, spearheading the development of climate change policy, Climate Change Act 2016, and Green Growth Strategy and Implementation Plan. She's a certified energy manager and has been instrumental in promoting the development of energy efficiency and conservation of on a national scale. Prior to KEPSA, Martha worked in several organizations, including Kenya Institution of Manufacturers, Kenya Power and Lighting Company. Most people refer it as lightning. No, it's not lightning, it's lighting company. She has been a speaker locally and internationally on energy, climate change, the private sector development. She is involved in mentorship, women empowerment, and community development. Our third panelist is Karin Boomsma. So Karin Boomsma is the director of Sustainable Inclusive Business, a project funded by the Netherlands government and hosted by the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. The project's objective is to encourage business to be sustainable and inclusive. So the two things are sustainability and inclusivity, with a positive impact on people, planet, and profit. She's achieved this has achieved through sharing of information on best practices and viable sustainable business models. She is a sustainability business expert and is actively raising awareness on business support around the concept of corporate social responsibility 2.0, a business as a force for good, positive impact on planet, people, and profit. Innovative look into circular economy and climate change has seen her sensitize both startup and established businesses to rethink their business DNA and redesign models into future-proof ones. Furthermore, she's also at the forefront of raising awareness on plastic waste management issues, recycling opportunities, and designing alternatives to single-use products. Through sustainable inclusive business, Karin is collaborating with existing companies to provide business models for that are future-proof. She aims to continue witnessing policy changes that encourage sustainable local manufacturing, increased job creation, and value addition to the Kenyan economy and beyond. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Mwencha Peter. So Dr. Peter Mwencha is a secretary and CEO of the International Relations Society of Kenya, and he has more than 10 years of wide-ranging experience as a lecturer, consultant, researcher, and boaster of extensive strategy, management, and policy-making experience in various sectors at institutional, country, and regional levels. Dr. Mwencha has a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, an MBA in Marketing Management, and a PhD in Business Administration. He's also a member of the Marketing Society of Kenya and serves on the board of several organizations. Those are the four panelists that we have with us today. And we have two discussants, Mrs. Triti Engineer Mbudia. She's a certified leadership coach and a professional marketer who has had the opportunity to work with diverse professionals in helping them achieve extraordinary results in their lives. Currently, she is a PhD student in management and leadership at the Management University of Africa. Triti is part of the adjunct faculty at Strathmore University Business School, where she is involved in coaching and teaching at various levels. Our areas of interest include personal development, marketing, communications, entrepreneurship, corporate governance, and sustainability. Triti is the first woman in East Africa region with a coveted accreditation of Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK. She has a deep love of writing, and her articles has been published in various publications, including Business Daily and Kenya Institute of Management magazine. In 2011, Triti was recognized as one of the Kenya's top 40 women under 40 for contribution to leadership initiatives. She has served on various boards as a non-executive director and a chairperson of the board. We also have Kesley Walker. She is an international. She has an international background, coming with from the United States, where she studied environmental science, then emphasis in coastal management. She has experience working in New Zealand in remote areas on biodiversity and conservation, Germany, and now the Netherlands. She uses her background in environmental science and nature conservation, art science, and environmental and land management to bring a natural capital-oriented approach to her projects. At the Rock Group, she continues to develop her skills in areas of business models, corporate social responsibility, and research and analysis. She also enjoys teaching in areas of sustainable business externalities. So those are the discussions that we have today. And of course, as I mentioned, my name is Ebenezer Amadi. I'm your moderator of the day. So we start our discussion, and we also encourage you to raise your questions through our chat room. So you're free to raise your questions. So we welcome you to the webinar. And as I mentioned, we are looking at sustainability in the wake of COVID-19, perspective from business, higher learning, utility management, and waste management. So let me bring our panelists to the discussion, and probably I'll just allow them to say hello as we begin our discussion. Probably start with Professor Ndemo. Good morning. Prof, seems we can't hear you. You're on mute.
These things were beginning, the most important word is unmute yourself. I'm happy to join you this morning and hope to hear more about sustainability programs going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ndemo. I also welcome Engineer Martha to say hello.
Thank you, Amadi. It's great to be here. Good morning, everyone. Looking forward to a great discussion. Thank you.
Karim Bonsman. Have we lost Karim? Karim? Probably Dr. Moncha, you can go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, SIB, for organizing this. I'm glad to be part of this, and I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Karim, can you hear us, Karim? It seems you have lost Karim there for a bit, but while she is trying to get a connection back, we'll let her also say hello to the team. So let's kick into the discussion. We are looking at the situation right now, which we are talking about in the topic of the day, which is sustainability in the wake of COVID-19. So when we look at sustainability, there are three parts that we normally emphasize on, which is planet, people, and profits. So the planet, normally we relate to the environment. People, we're looking at the society, and profits, we're looking at businesses. So all these three components depict what sustainability will be. For a businessman, they will tell you that sustainability looks at how the business is able to continue for the foreseeable future. And the impact of COVID-19 has been real. A study that was done by Kenya Private Sector Alliance shows that there are a number of sectors that have experienced a high impact, starting with the tourism sector. So 95% of the tourism sector says they have been affected. Education sector stands at 93%, and also sports, culture, and arts at 90%, and agriculture at 81%. The sectors that probably have not been have that high percentage of impact, according to the survey, is the financial sector, which 47% of them is still high, but it's if you compare it to tourism and education, then you would say it's a bit lower. And social work also is a bit lower. Yesterday, let me bring in Professor Ndemo into the discussion. Yesterday, we had in some of the media stations, they were talking about 7.1 million jobs that have been lost. So if you look at SMEs, because I know for a fact that you have written publications on SMEs and business, One of them that also had an interesting topic that I think it was more or less like a question that asked, what takes away women from entrepreneurship? So what would you talk about in terms of businesses or sustainability in the wake of COVID-19? Prof.
Thank you for the question. Indeed, SMEs have been most impacted by this pandemic simply because the supply chains have been disrupted. I was just looking at the food sector, especially those where many of the women work, mamambogas, where they have been affected deeply because the supply chains sort of were affected in the sense that the farmers who are growing were dealing with the issues of locusts, and then the pandemic comes, and then the supply chains got disrupted when people were locked up. So most of the small enterprises were very affected, and usually they don't get loans like bigger companies do, especially when government provides resources to banks to lend to SMEs. The micro ones never get any piece out of it. So they are heavily impacted more than the medium enterprises and larger enterprises because of these disruptions. And we have not sat down to reorganize how it is going to happen going forward. The area we must be worried about is food sustainability. Food sustainability is important because we need to be alive, we need to eat, we need to do everything. And in this, if you look at what is coming out, is that we need to create partnerships where government and the private sector sit together. We must begin to leverage big data to collect data to understand the supply chains and understand areas of deficit, areas of surplus. How can we assist the logistics firms in order to deliver food to where it's expected? That's how we can be sustainable and help the SMEs to survive. Otherwise, they can't survive on their own and be able to feed us.
Mm-hmm. You brought an interesting discussion there where you talked about SMEs are not able to get access to financing. And of course, the pandemic has caused, as you said, great impact to SMEs. So this therefore brings a risk of them being sustainable. Yeah, so in this regard, I'm talking about them being able to sustain or continue to run as a business in the foreseeable future. But again, if you look at the financial institutions, one of the risks that we'll talk about is if you give them loans, how will they repay if the businesses has gone down?
Well, every government has been giving stimulus packages, and our government indeed gave a stimulus package, but the banks kept quiet. When they were given money to lend to the SMEs, they were not able to lend. When the rates came down, especially the lending rates, were brought down by the government adjusting the rate at which they actually changed to two rates. One is the cash ratio in order to create more money, and the other was the lending. I keep on forgetting what rate, but it was supposed to give space for banks to lend. Banks were worried about the crisis and they did not lend. And another money went through there for SMEs. We haven't seen the money from there. The area where we should have leveraged was the fintechs who have been working with the private sector. The mamambogas, what they need is 1,000, 2,000 shillings to buy goods in the morning and sell in the evenings and pay. That is where the fintechs were perfect, but they were disrupted by policy that they cannot use the Credit Reference Bureau. So some policy statements have confused the environment in which we are working, which was actually more sustainable then than it is at the moment.
Thanks, Prof, for that perspective. Allow me to bring in Dr. Monja here to also talk about sustainability, the work of COVID-19 perspective of higher education. We've seen from the report that was actually shared by Kenya Private Sector Alliance say that the education sector had a high impact, of which 93% of the institutions in this education sector say that they have been affected. Dr. Monja.
Thank you, Ebenezer. Yes. Yeah, it's true that COVID-19 has had a very significant impact on universities and other higher education institutions, because as you're aware, this is something that was not expected, especially here in Kenya. We were not prepared for the pandemic. And as you're aware, the government has been trying to what I would call digitize the education sector. When the Jubilee government came in, one of the first agenda items they had was the laptop projects. But this project, unfortunately, did not go according to plan. And then again, it was only at one level of the education sector. So for us in the higher education space, and Professor Ndemo can attest to this, we have not been we don't have the facilities and we don't have the resources to do virtual learning or distance learning. I think most universities don't have the capacity to do that. And therefore, what has happened now with the closure of universities because of COVID-19, only one or two universities, to my knowledge, are able to continue operations normally. The big chunk of most universities now have had to suspend their programs. Whatever is happening now at the universities is more of maintenance activities, although there are one or two programs that are running, but essentially COVID-19 has had a very significant impact to universities. And this is not just in Kenya, because I was reading somewhere some article about Australian universities and the fact that now, because most of their students come from outside the country, because of their commercial education sector in Australia is one of the largest revenue earners. So the universities in Australia are asking the government for a bailout, because most of them are run as as commercial entities. So this is something that we even as in Kenya we should learn from. And one of the policy questions should be, going forward, should we run our universities as commercial entities, or should they be and is it that should we be delivering public goods using these private sector models, or should there be like a middle ground? Because when you look at now the example in Australia or in the US, that tells you the challenges that come with the commercial model. But that aside, I think what we need to do now is probably learn from. I wish, and this is a good start. I wish from now we should document what has the impact has been in the higher education, and I think the KEPSA report is a good start. And maybe at the sector board level in KEPSA, we should now do a more deep dive of what the impact has been on our sector, in particular the higher education. Please, thank you.
Now, Dr. Moshe, thank you for that perspective on higher education. The question that probably comes out from the discussion is that you've talked about use of ICT, use of technology in being able to train the students. But I'm also looking at when we try and adjust to the current situation, it will mean that universities will have less students in the classroom. So that means probably they will have to build either new classrooms or change their schedule so that all the students are able to learn as before. Or is it that they'll be able to shift some of their classes to the online platforms where lecturers are able to teach, similar to what happens to the distance learning training?
Can I add something in that?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we also have got to blame because we are shifting towards the fourth industrial revolution, where digitalization is very key. If you see the companies that are benefiting from COVID, they are highly digitized companies. These are Amazons, Googles. They are the ones that are benefiting. We were meant to move towards that space because the current industrial type education was supposed to be finished, and we moved to a more customized learning, leveraging emerging technologies. We did not. COVID has come as a blessing in disguise and just dumped us in there. We are supposed to adopt and begin to teach. I actually managed to finish my classes this semester. The graduate school ones went well. The undergraduate ones were problematic since many of the undergraduates were either not having broadband or not having a quiet place to attend class. These are inequalities that we have had over time. I think we have a great opportunity that we must begin to shift education to more customized, to more use of these technologies to deliver education. AI, for example, would help us in terms of providing learning to kids who would not have gotten a chance to learn because of adaptive learning. So there are benefits which we should not bury because normality has been disrupted by COVID.
Talking about normalcy, let me go back to Dr. Mwencha. Now you talked about, adopting technology and using it into the training. Do you think most of the of the students who will be graduating will accept to graduate online?
Thank you. Let me just. I want to echo what Prof has said. COVID has exposed inequalities in very many spheres of our economy or of our society, including education. And what you're seeing now is the issue with what you're seeing now is the issue of unpreparedness or lack of capacity, as I mentioned before. And I think if you are going to have an education sector that is forward-looking, we will need to invest in what Prof has mentioned. Technologies that are futuristic, and this includes the fourth industrial revolution. But coming to your question, whether or not students accept to graduate or to learn online, I think is an issue of attitude change. If you told Kenyans to walk around with masks sometime last year in December, I don't think you would have succeeded in getting many of us to wear masks and go outside and, sanitize and whatnot. But if you look at what is, if you step outside now and you walk around, everybody is having a mask. And if you don't have a mask, you're actually the one who is now, you feel awkward. So if you look at it from the perspective of attitude and behavior change, I think that is one of the key areas that we will need to build capacity on.
Just there. I want to do something with you.
We will need to have
Sorry, Dr. Moja, I think someone's mic was on. Kindly unmute. Thank you. You can proceed, Dr. Moja.
So we will need a lot of attitude and behavior change at all levels, from in the education sector, beginning with us who are faculty. We will need to be trained on how to use these technologies. I mean, now there's many of us, as Prof has said, the students have issues, especially the undergraduates. I've seen that across many of the universities. How will you assign exams to maybe 500 students virtually? It's more or less impossible if you don't have the technology and the systems to do that. But then again, how are the lecturers capacitated? How is the faculty? How is the university administration? Are they trained? Are they equipped to be able to handle these things and handle such number of students remotely? So those are the questions now from education policy and even at national level, not just at the university level, so that the universities can be sustainable. And I believe that if you actually put in these systems and institute them, you're going to have education that is much cheaper and affordable and accessible than what we have currently, because what universities are doing right now is putting up buildings which really do not translate into quality of education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moja. I've seen questions coming in. You're encouraged to keep sending in your questions. We'll be handling them after the panelists take their discussion in terms of the different perspectives that we have on the discussion. So we'll be having our panelists and also discussants answer your questions. And for the questions that will not be answered during this period, for the time that we have, we'll also have the questions sent to them and be able to respond, and you'll be able to get this through Committee on Physical Studies website. We'll also put it up on our website on sustainableinclusivebusiness.org, and also our partners will keep sharing this. Let me bring in Engineer Martha, looking at sustainability on utility management. And when I talk about utility management, I'm thinking about two aspects. That's energy and also water. I just looked at the statistics coming from Water Service Providers Association and saw that cumulatively their members spend about 250 million a month on electricity and also 200 million on chemicals. And during this period, of course, we see that imports, they're not coming as fast as we would have liked. For example, even with the PETs, we see that there's a delay or they're not enough. So kindly, Engineer Martha, you can take us through the discussion perspective of utility management.
Okay. Thanks, Ebenezer. I believe sustainability has come in at a very good point, and following through Professor, the two who've spoken before me, and it really resonates very well that utility management is the discussion right now, especially if you're carrying out your businesses and in terms of sustainability. So one thing that you look at when you talk of this, the numbers that you've just given, the question that comes into my mind is, what then do we need to do to ensure that, one, these costs come down, and at the same time, because utility management is all about using what you really need, optimizing the resources that you have, and all the way from raw materials to your processes to anything that comes in, to make sure that you don't compromise the quality of your product. So one, what organizations can do right now, and when we look at our policy environment and the legal framework, we have so many opportunities that everyone can take advantage of. We have policies that guide us into becoming sustainable and getting into energy efficiency or water efficiency. We can look at globally where we have the Paris Climate Agreement. When we come within Kenya, we have the policies from the Ministry of Energy. We have also some in the Ministry of Environment. When we look at the acts that are available, like the Climate Change Act, where it calls upon mainstreaming of resource efficiency within organizations, we're looking at the recently approved the National Climate Change Action Plan that also takes really draws into the discussions on energy efficiency, water efficiency, because these things are becoming scarce. Therefore, the talks on water energy nexus becomes the main point of focus right now. So what can organizations do at this moment? The first angle is, can we plan? Because we know what we are doing. Businesses, operations have gone low, but we still need to be in business. Like you mentioned, we're looking at people, we're looking at profit, and we're looking at the planet. So can we all plan to incorporate utility management within our daily works? That means having a company policy around it. When we're going into procurement, ensuring that whatever is bought incorporates the sustainability aspect, whether it is with equipment, if you're looking at the pumps, what does it mean? Which type of pumps are we going for? If we are replacing the lighting system, what type of lighting systems are we going to procure? Then if it is when we get into the usage, is everyone within the organization informed of the targets? We have targets around utility management, that is what is expected out of, what is our intensity? What is the allowed water usage for a ton of product, or what is the allowable electricity usage by a ton of product? Does everybody within the organization understand that? So that means now training people and giving them that awareness creation. And then when we go back again to the financing, is have we budgeted for this amount of money so that we don't reach a situation where organizations are not able to pay for their utilities, therefore disrupting their business operations, which again affects the future, because once you don't have the supply, then it means you cannot operate. And within COVID, we've already seen job losses. Therefore, when there's no production, it means again going to having people lose their jobs, and the triple effect. So there is no continuity, and then there's no work for people to do. So the other item that I can look into when we're talking about utilities, then why hasn't this been the main discussion, or why isn't it the juicy item every day that everyone talks about? It could be one, which I touch on what Professor Ndemo said, is also within financing. Because for you to invest anything that is about efficiency, say when you're looking at energy or you're looking at your motors, it will be a bit costly. So is that finance available? If I want to go into wind or solar, I'm looking for alternative sources of electricity. Do I have the capital to invest? And when I go to a bank or any credit facility or providing facility, are they willing to finance that item that I'm looking for? The other item we can look at is the skills, because we're looking at monitoring. You want to understand what do these bills mean? When I get a water bill, what are the components within that bill? When I'm looking at an electricity bill, what does it mean? If I'm looking at other forms of energy, if I am having a boiler within my organization, what do these bills mean, first of all? So do I only look at the cash amount, how much I'm paying, or am I looking at the quantity of the energy I have consumed so that I can match it with my production? So everyone has to be trained on that. The other thing that we can look at is the technology that we have. Is it as current as possible, or is it the old type? If you're looking at, say now the motors, what type of efficiencies do they have? Are we looking at the standard? Are we looking at the premium efficiency? So we look at technology. Are we within what other countries or other organizations who are beyond Kenya? Because we're looking what utility management does is that it gives us a competitive advantage, and we are selling to the global market. So if I am producing in Kenya, say I'm producing tea, and there's someone else producing tea in India, and we are selling to the market in China, then what gives them a competitive advantage? Because the raw materials and all of them is the same. So when you bring in resource efficiency, then I have that advantage. That is what we're looking into. The other item that I can just build on as I get it back to you, when you're looking at those gaps, is also the leadership. So do we have the goodwill from the leadership of organizations and businesses to incorporate sustainability in their processes from day one? Because as we said, it involves investment. It involves allocating a dedicated staff to just look at utility management. So is the board aware? Is the executive management, have they bought into this? The finance and the procurement people who have to go out and buy something at a higher cost than what they're using currently, are they within it? The people on the shop floor, are they also part and parcel of it? Do they know why? If every cost, each section within an organization or within a business run organization, do they know what it means? If you're in a hotel industry, like now, the entire tourism sector is almost, we can say it is, as you said, over 90% is not functioning. But if I am in the kitchen, do I understand what energy I am using within my kitchen and what it means later on to my salary, to the profits of the organization, and even to the growth of this organization and these businesses. So we have huge potential that is available, even just looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. We have several goals around it that help us. That is goal 6, we have goal 7, we have goal 11, goal 12, goal 13, and even finally goal 17, which is talking about partnership. Are we collaborating with others to help us understand what we need to do? If you're within the water sector, what is the best benchmark? What do we want to achieve? So when we look at all that, I think that's giving us the direction and sustainability discussion currently, and COVID-19 has given us a very good platform for us to continue with this discussion around it. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Martha.
Can
thanks
I
for the
amplify
discussion.
one small thing?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, I like what my sister has said, but if you look at energy, God does things in a miraculous way. He brings COVID and then lowers the price for oil globally, almost to zero. But our Kenya Power still charges us adjustments for oil. If they had to remove that, we become more competitive globally. This is what she's talking about. But nobody is asking, what have we benefited from falling oil prices? When we keep on paying, we don't know, we don't understand. Nobody asks those questions. That's what I wanted to amplify.
Thank you, Prof. And also within the discussions, when she was talking about efficiency and also looking at sustainability, because we also said sustainability has 3 components. That's people, planet, and profits. All those elements you have elaborated there. So you talked about profits.
You don't make abnormal profits when
Sure.
we know that we'll be supporting them in.
Sure. So that's when, of course, the element that you bring in is striking a balance between the 3 Ps, as people, planet, and profit. And I can compare this to our normal context where we are at home, where probably an average bill of water could be, let's say, 1,000 if someone is consuming between 0 to either 10 cubic meters a month. And probably in a month where no one was keen on which taps were open and which ones were being shut, and the bill comes to 2,500. The person who pays the bills, when they see the bill, they'll always ask questions in terms of the normal questions in the homes, like mlifanyia nini maji? Yeah, so it's more or less like how people are keen to look at how much did we spend in that particular month. So everyone will be keen when you wash your hands. They'll be like, hey, make sure you wash it for about 10 seconds and make sure the tap is closed. But again, COVID also changes the dynamic, because they say sing happy birthday twice as you wash your hands. So that means you also be using more water in our homes, and our bills will be going a bit high unless you're using but I also saw some innovative tools in the rural areas, where a young man came up with a 20-liter jerrycan and something that looked like it was more or less like mechanical. So he had a foot. He had a mechanism where he was stepping on it, and then the 20-liter jerrycan was turning, and he was washing his hands. And he had regulated the quantity of water that he was using to wash his hands. So opportunity for innovations are also coming in. The engineer Martha, did you have something to add on that? Do we allow Karim to move in?
Okay, I think we can allow Karim to move in, and let's maybe touch on to Professor Ndemo what he mentioned. And if we look at how because the tariff is regulated and it is set based on what has been consumed, and so on a monthly basis, the consumption either from any energy was considered. So whenever we have any thermal usage in terms of electricity, then it is costed and it is always approved by the ERC. So I believe, just to touch on it, is that yes, it is important that everyone feels the impact of what is happening, and also looking at what thermal use, what electricity was generated from the thermal plants last month, and has it really gone down? When we look at that now, that is what can guide us. How much percentage are we expecting more around it?
It never went down.
So for that, then I think we can also have a discussion around it with the ERC to discuss more. With now the new EPRA, sorry, it was former ERC, now it is EPRA. Is that fine, Amadi?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Engineer, for the perspective on water use and also energy. I'd like to bring in Karine. Karine, if you can hear us, to also touch on waste management. Just to kick off and to have a background, we see that waste management in most countries has a problem because we don't have a system of us collecting and also treating this waste and also disposal. So this is a critical area also for our economy. And considering that during this period, people are using more of single-use plastics and also trying to use personal protective equipment. So if we don't have the right behavior in terms of disposal, then that means we have more of this waste into our environment. So Karine, please take us through your perspective in terms of sustainability in waste management during this period.
Thank you very much. I hope my connection stays. It's super unstable, so sorry for that. Yes, I think in this COVID-19 period, we have really seen that systems are not, they're not brought together. So basically there's a big disconnect. And then you see immediately, if you don't have a complete system, like an ecosystem approach in terms of responsibility and sustainability, then you see big issues rising when there's a crisis. So in what we see with the plastic, for instance, there is not yet, we're working on it, but there is not yet in place an EPR, an extended producer responsibility. So what we are looking at is we really want to make sure that the new economy is going to be more circular, and that mindset starts in education as well. Because if you see that you produce something like plastics, you use it for packaging, and then the consumer uses it and then disposes it, but no one feels responsible for the material use, we're creating big disconnects, but also very big gaps in where and how are people responsible, but also how we take care of our resources. So the single-use plastic ban in this case is a very good example of actually trying to teach people what kind of materials are we using, for what kind of purpose, what kind of quality, and why should it be single-use. And that has not really entered our brains yet, I think. So therefore there's a ban to boost that and to speed up that mentality. But what you see now with the hygiene and masks, single-use masks, single-use plastic to be hygienic with this COVID is that we see actually an increase in single-use plastic and disposal. And that's a challenge again, because the waste picker
I'd like to request for us to mute our mics.
Now suddenly, sorry, am I back?
Yes, you're back, Karine.
So what we see is not only on waste. If you look at countries like Kenya, where there are still systems in development, like management of waste, we see that the discussion of circular economy and the care for materials and resources and how we use that appropriately starts from the end. It starts from where we have the problem, waste. Ultimately, what we want is that you don't label materials as waste, because they stay in the loop. You expand the lifespan of materials, and the minute that they are on the end of the lifespan, they should be returned to the same material. So input becomes output, and the outputs become input again. And this is not only on waste management. I think the systems, we are very, what you see with the COVID-19 is that one thing happens and everything collapses. So the whole economy is based on consumerism. So the minute we don't consume anymore what we don't really need, everything falls apart. Also, we are very relying on international trade, whether it's import or export, or it's even international tourists are responsible for the fact that we manage our conservation in Kenya. So the elephant is relying on the one single international tourist. We are relying on imports and exports. And what you see is that doesn't create any resilience and no ecosystem which is holistic. So I think that's, in terms of education, very important as well, to really bring in sustainability and thinking in systems rather than in silos. And I think that's what we lack. And we need to also be much more practical. I think if we talk about it, we need to go to the ground, and we need to make sure that kids and people work on the ground understand what does it mean to have access to water. Are you entitled? If you feel entitled to fresh water, then can you spill it? Why would you then spill it? So that is something we really want to change.
Thank you so much, Karin, for that contribution in terms of looking at waste management. We also saw with the tax amendment that what was there before as a should I call it as a benefit to the waste or recycling companies, where they had VAT of a corporate tax of 15%, and then when that was reviewed, it more or less like was taking them back, so it went back to 25%. Probably it wasn't deliberate. It was only that they were reviewing it, or not, or probably it was deliberate. So how do you think the waste management, let me call it like as a subsector or industry, will adjust to this?
Yeah, again, I think I have the tendency of repeating the same, but it's the disconnect in the systems. I think one ministry is not working with the other. If we would connect the Ministry of Environment and Health, we would solve already a lot of problems, because now suddenly the effluents and the pollution in water becomes a health issue, but now health is also aware of that. So I think a lot of things should be linked together. And that's what I mean with systems. In this case as well, if we want to create a more sustainable world, and we want to start recycling, and we want to start recovering materials, you should incentivize that. It can't be that that's more expensive than just dropping it in the environment. That means that we have to work with a new value set, because we simply have not included in a price of single-use plastic. It's so cheap because we didn't include the price of environmental pollution. We didn't include the price of taking it back. We didn't include the price of waste management. So there's no true pricing system in our linear economy. And if you want to go to a new system, a new economy, and which we call circular economy, then you can't do that on your old value sets. You can't then say, oh, recycling is actually super expensive. Let's just keep on polluting. So then you miss the point. You have to create new value sets as well. And in the beginning, it requires from the government to really support alternatives that are much better and much more sustainable. So they need to be cheaper, even if that's for a while artificial. Although I don't think the price of recycling is artificial, but I think the price of the current use of materials is very artificial, because there is no true pricing. So what is a pity is that we do not carefully look what is the impact of my choice and my decision on increasing tax on recycling to a complete different sector. So this triples down into, it causes health issues. We will see people are going to just send everything to the landfill. There's no point of recycling. So it's really affecting a lot of different industries, and it's actually counterproductive. So you want to implement an extended producer responsibility scheme, and all the manufacturers in Kenya will be obliged to participate, but yet we're making recycling more expensive. So I think that's a missed opportunity, and it's not looking at your complete cycle and ecosystem of your economy and of your society.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karine. Allow me also to bring in Kelsey Walker to also look at the relation between the different sectors. For example, if I look at the higher education and business, do we have a disconnect between the two? And what's your take on sustainability from that angle between the two sectors, so to speak?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there's absolutely a link between education and business and sustainability. I think echoing off of what Karen was just talking about, where it's a system approach. If we look at society and economy, business, it all is self-reinforcing. They're not acting in a vacuum. So education, business, government, policy, all of these are interacting with each other and creating this system in which we're living and working and being part of society. Education has a huge role in this, and COVID actually provides a large opportunity, I think, for creating transformative change, and not just in education and business, but in policy and government as well. I think that current business we know is unsustainable. We also just discussed about education and how there's an issue in education and the earning model, business model in education of universities. And this is why I think that it's very important that we address education in spurring forward sustainable society and business. There's often a large gap. We all know we want a sustainable society and economy. However, there's a large gap in knowing what that looks like. And applying that knowledge. And I think that that's where education comes in. And it's not just education in the sense of universities, so for students, but education of all the key actors that we need to bring about this change. So we've touched on business, about supply chain and procurement, and how it's important to understand within your business and your function what it means to be acting sustainably, how you can cause real impact. Also on the board level. So I believe that it was Engineer Martha was saying at the board level, we need to understand what it means to be sustainable so that we can allow a company to invest in sustainable options, have that capital to innovate from within to become more sustainable. Also within community, as Karen was just saying, we need to help educate and train community members on what it means to be sustainable in your daily life. Also local government and national government to create policy that allows for change. Also to create infrastructure in a resilient society so that we can, for example, have these recycling facilities and things that allow for real systemic change. The last one that I really wanted to point to was finance. We've all, I think, echoed the importance of finance in allowing change. However, it's important to understand what sustainable finance looks like, microloans, availability for key innovators, because COVID, as a professor said, can be a blessing in disguise. However, it can also be something that kills innovation. So if finance is going disproportionately to large companies, then you will not have the continued sustainable innovation coming in and disrupting the current system, allowing for systemic sustainable change. So in this, education, on the broad sense of the term, for all key actors is extremely important, and not just in what does it mean, but actually how you act, how you do it in your own function to create large impact. Thank you.
So we also had Dr. Muncha zoom in into the context, the Kenyan context. And we also want you to draw a comparison between what is happening in your country and what Dr. Muncha said, what is happening here in terms of universities trying to adopt the use of technology. And of course, there was a challenge with the undergraduate courses, but at least with the other ones they were picking up. Professor Ndema mentioned that he finished his class for the semester. So, what is there a similarity, or how would you compare the two?
Yeah, I see. I recognize the challenge. I also myself am teaching at the universities here in the Netherlands, and I recognize that here there has been quite an ease in transition to digital online education. However, I think that it also highlights societal inequalities because not everyone has access to online education. And as education is key, it's important to find ways to transition into this fourth industrial revolution we were discussing about, digitalization, so that there is access to education for all, and regardless of having to be physically present at a university.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Kelsey Walker, for taking us through that discussion, comparison between your country and Kenya, looking at the Kenyan context. Allow me also to bring in Engineer Treaty, looking at all the sectors, because I think marketing touches on all the sectors. And let me start from the point where, where the government looked at the essential service providers, and there was also the others in the bandwagon. And I'm looking at that from the context of a company. Do you think one of the budget lines to be reduced will be marketing, and what will be the role of marketing in this context to help businesses to sustain themselves?
Okay, thanks for the question, and I think it's a very interesting one because normally when there's a crisis, normally when finances become tight, you're very right, marketing is the first place where there's a lot of cutting and slashing, and budgets tend to go very fast. Looking at businesses and looking at the aspect of sustaining business and business growth, the last place to cut your budget right now should be within the marketing space. And it all stems from understanding what exactly marketing is. So a lot of times people confuse marketing to be the same as advertising. And they think that marketing activities are related to advertising. So let's slash advertising because, for example, people are not out right now. So why do we need billboards? No one's going to look at them. There could be other activities that people would want to restrict. So, for example, we have the curfew in place. There'll be very few road shows or very few interactions or merchandising opportunities within supermarkets, for example. So those are the activities that tend to go first. But we need to look at marketing from a much broader perspective. And I'll bring in the very famous 4 Ps of marketing here. And first we look at the product. What product do you have? And does this product actually meet the needs of the customer? This is where the element of innovation, I think it was Kelsey who mentioned about innovation. You've got to come up with new and innovative products that are going to help your business to be more sustainable, all right, for now, because we're in the COVID pandemic, but also moving forward in terms of the future. We look at this next P, which is the P of pricing. And someone mentioned that it's really maybe unfair or unethical for some of the business practices that we are seeing, where we have very high pricing or people taking advantage of the situation to make a kill right now. So how do you then make your pricing decisions in such a way that you're responsible you take care of your customers, and you think not just about making a huge amount of profit now, but you're thinking in the long run, because people may not have the disposable income now, but they will remember that when there was a problem, you as a business, you as a brand did not support them in any way, and therefore brand loyalty becomes damaged, and along the line you find that you lose customers. Okay. Then we have yes.
Sorry, proceed.
Okay.
You just raised an important perspective there in terms of looking at maintaining your customers. And actually, when
Yes.
I was doing my undergraduate research, I looked at customer loyalty and satisfaction, and comparing that to growth of companies. And we saw that customers who are dissatisfied will tend to tell 10 more people. So it means you're losing 10 customers. But if you're able to, and again, to get new customers is about 5 times more than maintaining your existing customers. So you're bringing an interesting perspective in terms of marketing can also support businesses to be sustainable so that they're able to have a consistency of their customers in the future, because they'll be looking at your product, of course, and also your pricing. You mentioned the 4 Ps. Is it the 5 Ps of marketing? I think it's product, place, price, and something else. You are the expert. And promotion, yes.
Yes.
So it's an interesting perspective that you bring into the discussion.
Yeah, and it's good that you've pointed out about the element of customer experience, because when you look under the P of promotion, single-handedly, this is going to be the differentiator here during this period for businesses as they are looking at sustaining their business and getting out of this hole that the pandemic has put us in. Then customer experience becomes really key. And now we connect this to what Prof was saying earlier about the transition to digital technology, because not only are we trying to encourage businesses to move towards that direction, but in addition, our customers are moving there. So there is a change in digital behavior in terms of the consumption patterns, in terms of where people are sourcing for information. So they're going out there onto these digital platforms, and if today a business is not found on those digital platforms or has not understood how to harness the power of those digital platforms, then you find that they will be left behind. So there are certain things that marketing professionals can really help businesses to think about, to do. We've talked about innovation, we've talked about customer experience and ensuring that not only is your customer delighted, but they also practice exactly what you've said, Amadi, about telling other people. So word of mouth marketing, which really, if you look at it, word of mouth marketing and digital marketing are affordable ways of carrying out promotional activities. Okay, so back to your question about slashing the budget line, that there are ways of carrying out marketing activities that are cost effective, that are efficient, and that are meeting the needs of the customers. And you can also see that there is a shift towards how distribution is being done. So what we call the P of place, where now people are making online requests or purchases, and things are being delivered to their doorstep. I mean, again, if I look back at maybe 6 months ago, that option was there, but there was no real uptake of that. Today, everybody wants to sit at home in a safe environment and wait for the goods to be delivered to you. So as a marketer, you need to be able to bring out the different aspects of helping a business to be sustainable, because right now you have a very key role to play in terms of ensuring that that business exists now, that it grows, and it grows for the future. And from where I sit, I think that there is a huge opportunity available where it's possible for businesses to look at those areas, look at how you're going to innovate, look at how you're going to build your customer experience, and embrace digital technology. If you do those three things, then you are certainly on your way to driving sustainability right now and for the future, because you've got to think short term, medium term, and long term.
Good. Thank you so much for the clear discussion in terms of looking at marketing and its place in business and supporting business to be sustainable. We've had questions coming in, and we want to appreciate the participants for typing in your questions. We have questions for our panelists, and also we'll let our discussants also come in to have a discussion. I want to start with Professor Bitange. So someone asked, why is it that the micro enterprise do not receive funds that is meant for them? And then linking that to the same question, someone also asked that now that the government tried to get the banks to lend by reducing on the cash ratio, how can you get banks to lend? And did they focus on the wrong institutions, or were they supposed also to look at SACCOs and also possibly chamas? You also talked about the online lending platforms. Bitange.
Yes, I think there is a policy disconnect when you give the banks to lend to micro and small enterprises. Most of these micro small enterprises do not need a lot of money. Banks cannot never ever lend you 1,000, 2,000, or even 5,000. Banks want to lend something like 100,000 and stuff. It's useless for a micro enterprise, so they wouldn't even go there to look for it. So the innovation that has brought fintechs is what we can use, the mechanisms to provide those lending to micro enterprises. And if they can find a way of lending through SACCOs too, that would be very creative. But the one that is working at the moment are fintechs. And the trouble is that fintechs, the lending rates are very high. It is high because the non-performing loans are actually very high. They take risk on behalf of government. So the thing is, what happens from the studies we've seen, most of the women borrow very early in the morning, at 3 in the morning, buy their produce, sell them, and pay the same day to minimize the lending costs. The problem with fintechs came when people borrowed to bet, and those were mostly men. So women are being punished for no reason at all. So government should forget that the banks can play in the micro enterprise sector. They will never do, but the money still goes through the banks, and that is what has been happening. It is something we look at what other countries are doing, but those countries are richer countries than us. We have more poorer people. We need a more innovative way of providing those funds, and that way was discovered through fintechs. But we are destroying them by removing them from the Credit Reference Bureau.
Interesting discussion there, Prophet Ndemo. And this reminds me of the group that were being called the unbankable, when some of the institutions like I think Equity Bank were trying to come in to try and lend to what people were calling the unbankable, and we saw that they grew because of the numbers. So they were working on economies of scale. And of course, you also talked about the issue on interest rates. People want to say that the interest rates are a bit higher, but they also have to compensate based on the risk. So they calculate the interest rates based on the risk that they'll be able to take. So the higher the risk, the higher the interest rate. Thank you so much, Professor Ndemo, for that. We also have a question here for Dr. Moja that asks, how do we reconcile the need for education to move to the digital platform and those who cannot access these classes? So we have, on one end, the need to move to digital platforms, but we have, on the other end, lack of access to the digital platforms. So how do we reconcile the two?
Thank you, Ebenezer. That's a very pertinent question in light of what is currently happening and what we discussed before, the fact that our education, COVID has just slammed the brakes on education in Kenya, and we are now grappling looking for solutions, and I think this is a discussion that should not just be left to maybe politicians or those in the education sector. This should be a discussion that the entire society is involved in. But to your question, I think two things need to be addressed. The first issue is policy. I was speaking to someone from I'm a member of the KEPSA Education Sector Board, and I'm aware of discussions around e-learning, and I was surprised that we don't have a policy on e-learning in Kenya. So that should tell you how the gaps that are there at the moment in the education sector when you don't have an e-learning policy. So basically, whatever is happening is ad hoc, and it is basically everybody is doing whatever they feel works for them. So there is no overall framework, no structure to guide what is happening, and that I think explains why we are in this problem as we speak. So first of all, and this is just coming from KEPSA, my discussions with KEPSA, we are trying, the sector board is in the process of trying to organize a stakeholder meeting to discuss issues around education in technology, technology in education, whereby what kind of systems or framework or methodologies should we use, and what is the need, first of all, for that to happen. And obviously the need is there. We can see education has come to a standstill, and if we're not, if we don't find solutions urgently, even post-COVID, like I said, this is something that you mentioned, we may not have the same number of students in the classroom going forward. We might need to, because of the social distancing and I think 1 meter rule, we will need to space the classes differently as we have been doing. So that means there will be need for more resources, which right now are not there because of the fiscal challenges the government is facing. So technology comes in to play a critical role in terms of mitigating the challenges that we're facing. So so we cannot avoid these discussions of what role technology will play. I am not an expert in technology, so I don't want to go into the details or nitty-gritties. Maybe Professor can shed more light on the technology aspect of it. But what I can say is that we are seeing there are certain universities that have been able to conduct some classes or some programs that are still running. So are there lessons we can take from them? Is there something we can learn and something we can add on to that? But also from other than the policies, then the institutional framework within the government. So we have the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, but then how should the infrastructure then be built to supply the education technology infrastructure? Because I don't think that each university should be allowed. I don't think it's a good model to allow each university to experiment with what they're doing. I think it's better when you have like an overall provider. So at the moment you have an institution called KENIC, not KENIC, but KENET, Kenya Education Network, KENET, which provides internet to education institutions, subsidized internet. So one of the proposals that I've had is, can Kenneth then be the body to provide an e-learning system, a technology system that can then uniform? Because if you let each university or higher education institute, experiment with what they're doing, you're going to have disparities, and more, and also, given our governance issues, some people might be procuring systems that are not up to par with what the students need, for the sake of for their own individual benefits. These procurement scams we've been seeing in the public sector that are in the public at the moment. So some of the, maybe Professor, this is something his take on what is the possibility of having a uniform service provider where, because Kenneth is one of the bodies which has the muscle, because they're already engaging with all these institutions, so that we have an uniform infrastructure, uniform services, and something that is subsidized, that makes sense. Then it can work with all these other institutions, like the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and even the other bodies, the universities themselves, and maybe the service providers now. Kenneth can procure that, and also it can also work with the ICT authority and the ministries. So I think for me that is one of the solutions that should be, that are one of the possibilities that post-COVID or even now should be discussed, and so that when we now go back to normalcy, we don't have too much, sometimes too many cooks spoil the broth. So we need a clear way forward so that you can move quickly. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Moja. I'm seeing Prof wanted to add something to that question, but
just say one
as you also want to add on to that, probably you can also tackle this question with that in brief. Someone else also asked, can the government sustain the tax incentives given providing public services, given that the country has significant debt repayments to make? So you can add on that and also quickly touch on that.
Yes, I come from, my philosophy is that too much regulation constrains innovation. And I think what we need to, not to ask government, is to come up with a policy on e-learning. We have everything. E-learning is just the same thing you are doing, which you move it to a different platform. What you have seen in most Western universities is that every professor teaches and puts their teaching on what you call massive open, the MOOCs. Yeah? We need to make it that way, that all of us provide that in the open, because we are paid by public. And with that, probably I can explain a concept better, or Daktari can explain a concept better than myself. And people understand differently. I can like the way you present and understand. So we should have a variety of this online, such that if we are teaching curriculums, I can go online and see 20 different teachers teaching the same concept. Because the way forward, it's going to be more customized to learners, meaning that you can access it from any part. If you look at what Khan Academy has done to mathematics, he has completely revolutionized the area of mathematics, and you have never met Khan because you actually access that online. So the technologies that we have already are sufficient. There is nothing that we need to buy other than the device. The platforms, we don't pay the one we are using now. We don't pay Google, the one we are using for Classroom, for others and stuff. So we can leverage on this because business models have changed in the sense that you use it for free and then they recover their money in other ways. So we need to leverage. There is actually nothing we need to buy. Kenneth is providing broadband. You need to buy your own device. If it is at the cheap Huawei smartphone, it can actually give you the same knowledge as the one who bought a super laptop, which is worth $5,000. So this is an equalizer. And if any university begins to lie that they need to buy something, I think it is false. You can, if you want to put your work on the cloud, you can put it there. I can access it with whatever equipment that I have. So we have a very liberalized space in terms of technology for us to learn. And all I'm saying is that let us stop hiding behind the aspect that, we need to be trained. I did not see one class for M-Pesa where people went to learn how to use M-Pesa because they had interest in it. So if we had interest in education, I would spend time to mumbo jumbo through and I understand what I need to do. And that is the best way of learning, which is what we call lifelong learning, which is the future. You have to be in that future to succeed. So you can't say every time we need a trainer to teach me on how to access email. Email, everybody now accesses it. There were no classes for email because it was necessary that you understand it. And that's how I want to see people adopt to this. The last question you asked, whether the government, if this crisis goes beyond 1 year, we would be in serious chaos. Already you can see the constraint with government because most of us who work in the public sector, already government has chopped salaries and said, we need you to contribute towards this. Maybe if it happens, they would chop 50%. I think what they chopped was 30% or something. So let's pray that this crisis do not become worse. We need, as local researchers, to come with our own modeling so that we understand. Let's not wait. And this is what I say, we take something from out there and put it here, and it doesn't work. Yeah, Africa's population, 70% is youth. We are less vulnerable to this pandemic than it is to countries where the average age is around 50 or 60. So we need to figure out who we take to work because the risk levels are much lower. So we need to begin to think around that space and be able to open up the economy and be able to sustain ourselves.
Thank you so much, Professor Ndema. What you're saying there is that we should have local solutions for our local problems. Thank you so much. I also want to bring in Karim into the discussion here with the questions that we have. So someone asked, what do you think is the best approach in order to enhance change in the value sets and encourage recycling, especially in Kibera and other informal settlements? So how do we encourage recycling in these informal settlements, Karim?
Hi. Yeah, I saw the question indeed. I just want to zoom out and then zoom in a bit. I think, again, we have to have a different system where people who are poor or don't have the money to pay for waste collection could be first and foremost part of the workforce around it. But secondly, I think it should be some of services in our community and in our society should be for free, but not completely for free that you don't care anymore. But you should be able to dispose your waste appropriately. I think definitely we need to move to sorting at source. So we need to set up a system where you can source the materials you're disposing in order for it to be much better recyclable or reusable. So that's one thing, and there you can create jobs at the same time. I find that for those services that people cannot afford, we need to create the biggest disposers or the biggest wasters. They need to pay more, so you have a more equal system. And what I would promote, I spoke to a person in the water industry and water sector, and he had a nice idea about like a basic income, but then different, like having credits for basic services in society, like access to water, access to proper waste management, kind of instrumental for our health and our well-being, so for the environment. And if with, for instance, you have water access to a specific, everyone has a specific amount of free, but it credits, you're not going to wait because you don't have access to water or access to this, just spill it, because if you don't sell your credit on water, then it should clear the use, the trees, for instance, splendor be paying, because also boost alternatives, like especially culture was massive fresh water choose.
I think we're losing you a little bit, Karim. Hello, Karim. I think we're losing you there for a bit.
Back?
I think there's a problem with the internet. We can hear you in parts. So I think it's a network.
Can you my video?
Probably you can try turning off your video, and so we try and see if we can be able to hear you. If not, then we'll give you some time so that it destabilizes it. It stabilizes, then you can come back. Hi, Karim.
I have my camera ready. Now, Beth.
I think the network is still poor, Karim. I think we can give it a few, like 2 minutes to stabilize, and then we can get back to the point, because we can't hear you clearly. So just give you about 2 minutes, then we'll get back to you. But in the meantime, let me go to Martha. We'll get back to Karim. Sorry, apologies for that. I think we have a slight problem with the network. So, Engineer Martha, someone asked, do you think the people in tourism sector understand their roles and what can be done about going forward, so we do not experience such a near-death disruption in the future? 97%. And can the government use fiscal policies to reduce the cost of doing business? That's the question for Engineer March. I think you're on mute. You can unmute.
Yes, you can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Let me touch on the two. Okay, one is on tourism. What has come out is there's need for looking at the business model currently. Where exactly are we looking at our markets? Is it local market or is it international market? And therefore, once this organization look into that, then we all need to think through which is the best business model to sustain this. We all need international tourists come in and support us because of what we have as a country. Kenya is a very beautiful country, and one of the items we say is we want to take Kenya to the world. Therefore, bringing in international tourists coming in is a very good thing. At the same time, because COVID has happened and it has showed us that the airspace can actually be closed and just have the local people who are supposed to carry out and go through the whole country. Therefore, there needs to be a way of promoting local tourism. And what I've seen the government doing currently is that they're doing, if you look at it, they've given some boost, stimulus package to the tourism sector. And one of the items going through is marketing of the entire, let me now call it the tourist attraction places. If you see recently what happened in National Park, we've also seen other documentaries coming in to explore the country for us. So we have a very huge opportunity from that aspect of looking at both internal and the external market. The other thing that I can bring in terms of sustainability is looking at their costs. Even if they don't have revenues coming in, there are those costs that we call the base load and the operational costs that with or without guests have to be sustained. So maintenance has to be done in these hotels. Therefore, the organizations are incurring costs, but there's no revenue coming in. And for them to manage those costs henceforth, it means can they incorporate resource efficiency practices from now? If others have done it, we've seen that with other organizations who've really done very well, especially those in the coast. Because if you look at the coastal side, because of temperature difference and the humidity and all that, yet you still want people to be comfortable. You can see they're looking at the fans, they're looking at the type of refrigeration and cooling systems that they have. Others are also looking at if you want to still maintain the hot water system, what do they need to do? And so since those are the big ones, it means they need to incorporate the latest technologies on this refrigeration and heating systems where need be in the cold areas, and also providing steam. Now, if you want to go to the spa, so it is generally look at the entire system. What do we need to do in the tourism sector in terms of usage, utility management? There's also water efficiency that comes in. Are they recycling their water? Are they reusing their water? What type of taps are they using? So you look at the whole perspective. What do I need to do? What do I have for future that I can use it? Like if you're looking at the toilets, we have this new cisterns that you can still wash your hands up there and then it fills up the cistern tank. Are people incorporating that in their designs? So it also gives us an advantage for anyone coming in to develop any hotel, industry or a lodge, is they look at green building design. That is right from the beginning. Before you do anything, can I start incorporating large windows just to use natural lighting during the day? And have cooling systems that I don't need electricity, but you just have coolers to provide the required temperatures inside the rooms. So those are the items now for someone to look in when you're looking at the tourism sector to avoid future crises like this. The other item on incentives, I can touch on basically mostly we can say for promoting energy efficiency and also electricity management. One of the items that I can say the government has done is that it has introduced time of use, because I see the question is purely for businesses that spend a lot of money on utilities. Looking at organizations that consume about 8 million units a month, those days of electricity without including other energy, that's a lot of money first of all. So what has the government done? The first thing is they've introduced time of use. Therefore, it is encouraged for them to use more electricity at night. Remember, the demand at night is low, and we still have generating plants giving out electricity, and even we have some from steam in terms of from the geothermal. So the government has implemented time of use tariff, whereby you have energy rates at half the price, and it's purely at night from 10 to 8 a.m. in the morning, and also to 6 a.m., and mainly from Saturday in the afternoon all the way to Monday. That's one way of encouraging people to consume electricity, expand your business, because we look at creating employment. Therefore, now, how do you create employment? It means you increase your business operations. And how do you increase your business operations without hurting your costs that much is introduction of those time of use tariffs. The other thing that has happened is, if you remember the previous tariff that was introduced on electricity, it cut across, it actually segmented. We have the domestic customers, we have the SME category, and we have the commercial and industrial, the large power customers. So all this, the energy tariffs were looked into the rates, and it was reduced. And I know currently there's also a review of those tariffs. So that band is also one way of promoting SMEs to manage the costs and also continue using electricity so that they don't affect their profits. Then the other thing that came in, but again that was removed recently on the Tax Amendment Act, was the rebates. It was introduced last year that 30% you can get it on what you have already consumed of electricity. So It was just meant to encourage, and it was looking at 3 indicators. One was in terms of sales of the organization, revenue made. The other item that it was looking into was the investment that was done, and then the electricity consumption from the grid. Those are the indicators, and it was meant to support businesses on that. The other item that we can look into, one way is promotion of use of energy saving companies, the ESCOs. So this is a way of providing financing, whereby an organization comes in and takes tells another organization that they can invest on their behalf and they can benefit from the savings they have made. So they will use the savings already received to pay off the initial capital investment. So when we look at all this, and I know it has come in strongly, the National Energy Efficiency Strategy is being developed. So that is one item that is being discussed that can really promote businesses to get into utility management, reduce on their costs, and still now promote all the 3 Ps that you are looking into. And I agree, it's not all about huge profit making, but businesses have to be sustainable. So it is balancing all the needs and making sure that this organization that we're talking about can sustain between now, whether there's a crisis or not, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years from now, that they do that. And at every juncture have, like what Kaizen says, continuous improvement. So they measure. They can only control what you can measure. So they install either meters, have logbooks, and record keeping. They measure on a regular basis and monitor, analyze, and after that now recommend and still continue measuring. So they have a way of monitoring what they have done. That is what I can give my. Can maybe just Amadi, I remember there's a discussion on education. Allow me just to bring this. Is one other item that we would push for is now incorporation of utility management all the way from the primary level. Because when you teach our children on energy management, climate change, water efficiency from a young age, then it becomes a culture for them to continue doing it all the way, and it becomes a lifestyle that they can put it up to. So that's one other thing I wanted to bring on education. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Martha. That's an interesting observation in terms of looking at the 3 Ps and having a balance between people, planet, and profit. And of course, you talked about creating awareness from our younger generation so that as they grow, they're able to understand how to utilize the resources that are there. That's all about discussion on sustainability. Let me get back to Karine. I'm not so sure if the internet has been able to stabilize on her end. Karine, are you there? Hello, Karine. We seem to have lost Karine again. She was in at some point, and I think the network has we're having some challenges there. Quickly, let me move to treaty. Someone asked that is there an opportunity for marketing to expand within the digital space? But again, also putting in mind that there were some proposals to tax businesses that are operating in the digital space. Of course, we saw Uganda beginning with this by introducing is it a social media tax? So it means that every time you use social media, you're also paying some taxes. So what opportunities do you see?
The way I look at it, digital and embracing digital technology is the way of the future. We really have very little choice but to move to that direction. And I think from a policy perspective, the government has identified that, and they are sort of signaling their appreciation of that particular phenomenon by recognizing that there's an opportunity for them to generate revenue by introducing this taxation on businesses that are done on digital platforms. Of course, on the other side of the coin, the businesses are not all that very happy about it, because not only with some of these tax policies complicate the way they do their mathematics, their calculations, and probably their pricing as well, but chances are very high that they're going to pass some of these costs on to the end customer. And so we may see a situation where pricing will have to go up because some of these are being passed down. But looking at the overall picture, I think this is a situation we are going to have to embrace one way or the other. And the sooner we have a mindset shift to the fact that we are able to use this technology to drive businesses to move forward, the better it's going to be for all of us. It's going to be much easier for communication. It's going to be much easier in terms of collecting feedback and research from your customers. So if you are on your social media pages, for example, you could be on Instagram or Facebook, you have the opportunity to collect feedback that is so valuable to you that it can not only help you to improve your processes and systems, but it can also give you ideas on the next innovation to introduce into your business. So if you look at it from a different angle, you will see that there are more advantages to you embracing, or businesses embracing, digital technology and digital platforms. And I think it's going to result in a wider customer base. It's going to result in more customer engagement, more customer loyalty, and eventually it ends up building the brand of the organization. And which organization would not want its brand to be built? Because the more your brand is known, the more people are aware of your brand, the greater the value your brand has. The greater the value your brand has, the more you're able to command investment opportunities, the more you're able to command requesting for loans, for example, the more you're able to command an expansion into other markets. So I think it's a ripple effect, and I think this is the right time for businesses to embrace digital technology and to work with marketers who have experience in this area to be able to get them to make the right decisions.
Thank you so much, Engineer Triti, for bringing that perspective on marketing. You talked about taking advantage of the current situation, and I quickly thought about, when I pass Mombasa Road, there's always a company that sells steel. And on the left side, I saw a company called Doshi. So they took advantage of some moment where people were saying Chuma ni Doshi. And I think now people know who the Doshi is. Anyway, that was an unlighted note. Let me go to Kelsey. Someone asked, are there tools and strategies available that SMEs can use to survive COVID-19? So we're looking at the linkage between businesses and also the education sector. And also looking at, are there opportunities for them to use tools, or their strategies to survive this period?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Now, I think all businesses are traditionally looking at cost minimization, which usually means job loss, and also at the same time looking for funding. I think businesses are subjected to the same things, kind of going back to my environmental background. Businesses are subjected to sort of the same pressures as you see in the environment of kind of adapt or die. Right now, you see that industries such as the tourism sector or education sector are having massive challenges because of certain aspects of their business where they can't easily adapt it. It has to do with physical presence, which is no longer a possibility. I think that searching for niches for SMEs where they can adapt their business and ways to use sustainability, so lean models. One of the things that Karen mentioned about waste streams becoming circular, so looking for what resources you have close by if you're a production company within your chain. Using the pillars and aspects of sustainability to innovate your company, and perhaps flexibility and adaptability are extremely necessary. So if we look at the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, there is a lot of joblessness. So how can we, within our current businesses, offer trainings or fill gaps that are necessary to help increase employment? How can we see those current needs, perhaps in the technology sector, where we can shift, pivot, and go in that direction? Back to something that Triti was just saying about, businesses are often quick to cut in marketing. I find we work also with business, and I find that for a lot of businesses, the one area that they're really willing to invest in still is sustainability, and is anything to do with technology, because technology increases efficiency and decreases cost, and you're able to measure it quickly. So those using technology and sustainability to help identify the needs of society and adapt the company in those ways, I think, are the best tools that you have moving forward.
So basically, also looking at it from the point of artificial intelligence that Professor Ndema was talking about, so to be able to ideally use that feedback so to improve on the products that you have or the services that you have going into the future. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I'm not so sure if we have Karine back. Karine, are you there? If you're back, then we can give you a few minutes to finish off on the points before the internet failed on us. Karine? Oh, okay, we're not able to get her. Let me get back to Professor Ndema. So someone asked that I believe there are standards that take care of sustainability. And that is GRI. I believe that is supposed to mean Global Reporting Index. And in this context, I think the person was talking about Sustainable Development Goals, because that's a tool to track Sustainable Development Goals. I believe if I'm wrong, I can be corrected. So the person asked, what is Africa doing to make compliance mandatory? I believe in terms of tracking Sustainable Development Goals.
Let me say that SDGs were, it is every country's objectives. If you look at our Vision 2030, some of what we wanted to achieve is what is in the SDGs. If you look at the Agenda 4, it is actually in the SDGs. So we have several levels at which to check how we are performing on this. And the citizens themselves should be asking how much progress have we made. For example, if you look at SDG number 1 on poverty, it is incumbent upon us to see how much progress we have made, how many people we have moved out of poverty. But more important is actually to know what is our contribution towards poverty, and we stop it. Because culture is a major contributor to poverty. Yeah? Everybody wants to subdivide land, and we know subdivision lowers productivity. You lower productivity, you would never make money, even if God was to stand next to you on a daily basis, because you undermine yourself. So it is not just the government, it is us to say, let's aggregate the land and see whether we can make profits. Now, when you chop into 1 acre, and you know there is something called break-even, there is no crop you can grow on 1 acre to make money. You are just inviting more poverty. So we have a responsibility as much as government has with respect to achieving those sustainable goals. When we are talking about water, what are you doing with it? Are you the one who opens the tap because it's not yours? You walk away and water just runs. We must be able to, we are the implementers of that, in as much as we want the government to achieve them. And we can check from every level to see that we have achieved most of those, which it's not for the UN, it is for us. That's how it's supposed to be looked at.
Let me also bring in Dr. Mancha. So Dorothy asks, what happens to businesses post-COVID in terms of sustainability, considering some organizations cannot fully transition to the digital space? And as well as someone also asks, how will the universities continue to fund the operations, considering that with the switch to the online platform learning, then they will be paying less compared to what they pay now? Because if you look at the fee structure for full-time students going into the university, the fee is higher than what an online student will pay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ebenezer. Let me just add on to what Prof has mentioned. I want to highlight the fact that universities have been one of the biggest, champions of sustainability, at least in developed countries where sustainability is mainstream issue. So there's what we call Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, which is supported by the UN under the UN Principles for Responsible Management Education, and also under what you call Education for Sustainable Development. So this is something also that Kenya education sector is also been embracing, although gradually, and is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, because we realize that when the employees or the people who you expect to be running enterprises or businesses, or even other organizations for that matter, they need to be trained on sustainability issues. And that's why the UN has been championing this integration of sustainability into higher education. And that's why also in Kenya we have something called Kenya Green University Network, which is a network that was launched in 2016, bringing together 70 universities, and it is facilitated by the UNEP, and it is reorienting the curriculums of higher education institutions to integrate sustainability into the curriculum. Yes. So going back to the question now, how universities will be
just a minute, Dr. Mancha. Yes. Let me request that we switch over our mics so that we're able to hear Dr. Mancha. Please proceed, Dr. Mancha.
Yes. So going back to the question around question about how, first of all, if I understood you, how universities would be able to what you call manage pay their bills or become sustainable. So basically meet their obligations. I think two things here. First of all, this is not just a problem with the universities. I think coming from a management background, our universities have the wrong structure. Cost structures in the universities are wrong. And I think COVID has just highlighted the issues. About 2 weeks ago, there was an article in the newspaper about how we have two universities where the top is heavy, the administrative side of the university is bloated, whereas the curriculum side, the faculty side, is very thin. So if you look at the ratio, for instance, in our universities, just I think, and this some of these statistics are there, and I think even KEPSA has them. When you look at the number of people with PhDs in universities in comparison to other universities in better ranked universities in the US and Europe and even Asia, you'd find that ours is lopsided. The people without PhDs or without masters, or even the faculty, just the people who are now in the faculty, they are fewer. They are less than the number of administrative people. So that is cause for concern, because with now COVID coming into play and having to the challenges that we'll be facing, it means that the university will have to hire more instructors. Where are you going to get them? So there's one of the options is you've got two options. Either you get more instructors, or you go do what you call e-learning or virtual learning. So the issues around cost can be managed by tweaking the cost structures in the universities. And then, like I said, investing in technology. Another statistic that I want to point out is less than, if I'm not wrong, less than 30% of Kenyans have higher education. And one of the factors that limits access to higher education is cost. So the argument that, you know, universities will not be able to meet their costs is for me is neither here nor there, because why don't you make education then more accessible by having, then you can have probably a larger number of students. But then again, going back to the universities themselves, the government has been trying to restructure the university, because we have more universities. We went on a university expansion spree, and we put up buildings, but many of those universities, you'd find that they're really not universities, they're just glorified high schools. So we need to go back and restructure, and the government has been trying to merge universities, as you are aware, of political entities than universities. So the costs will have to come down, and one of the issues is to then merge the universities, reduce the administrative costs, and transfer that cost into the technology side, or the, you know, the faculty side. Secondly, I think your second question was about, was it taxation? There was a second question.
No, taxation, I think Professor Ndemo had already touched on it.
Okay.
You have addressed the question, but I also noticed you thank you so much, Dr. Welch. You have used a strong word there in terms of looking at them as glorified high schools. That's another point to discuss. Probably we'll set up another webinar to deliberate further on that. I see it's our time now is 12:06. We're supposed to stop at 12. So we only have about 4 minutes to close. So I want to take this opportunity to appreciate our panelists and presenters, and also the participants for also taking time. That's 2 hours to listen into the panelists on our topic that we are tackling today is sustainability in the wake of COVID-19, perspective of higher education, utility management, waste management, and also business. So our panelists, I will just give them 30 seconds to give you closing remarks. Let me start, and I will also give an opportunity to our discussants. Let me start with 3T, sorry. Am I calling you 30? 3T engineer, to give your closing remarks in 30 seconds.
All right, so it's been a real pleasure being with everyone on the call today, and I think that the discussion around sustainability has come out at a very important time for businesses to move forward, for them to be able to survive. It's important that, from my perspective, they embrace marketing as a important area that can allow them to do so. And we need to look at what we're going to do in the short term and the long term in terms of the initiatives we have in place in order to ensure that businesses are sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, 3T engineer. 3T engineer is a seasoned marketer, and we are privileged, and we also thank you for taking the opportunity to join us for the discussion. Let me give this also opportunity to Kesley Walker.
Yes, thank you so much. I also want to echo that sentiment of thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's been an interesting discussion. I think that my final remark will be, in all of our dealings with sustainability, please don't forget the systemic viewpoints. We're not working in a vacuum. Everything is reinforcing each other. We can use COVID-19 disruption to really create positive systemic change. And for that, education, on a broad sense of the term, is necessary, so that we all know in our different functions as educators, as policymakers, as students, as citizens, what we can do to bring about change and create action and impact. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelsey Walker, for taking your time also to join us. we're privileged also to have you joining the discussion, looking at the linkage between business and the universities, also looking at environment. Thank you so much, and we hope to continue engaging with you in further webinars. I think we have lost Karim. I can't see her in the chat, and also participants. She had a problem with the internet. Today, I think the internet has failed us, but Karim Bonsba is the Director of Sustainable Inclusive Business at Kenya Private Sector Alliance. She was touching on waste management and how then can we ensure that there is sustainability for institutions or companies that are in the space of waste management. Let me take this opportunity to also invite Dr. Moncha to give his final remarks.
Thank you, Ebenezer. I'd like to thank the organizers of this webinar, which is the Committee of Fiscal Studies. I'd like also to thank all the fellow panelists and the discussants for quite an insightful discussion. This has been quite enlightening, and I'm looking forward to more of such. I wish you all the best, and thank you again for quite an interesting discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moncha. Dr. Moncha has been instrumental in taking us through the discussion, focusing on higher education. He is also part of the Education Sector Board at Kenya Private Sector Alliance, over and above his credentials that I mentioned as he was starting the webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Moncha. I also want to give the opportunity to Professor Ndemo to give his final remarks.
For me, is to thank you for inviting me to this sustainability discussion. I'm hoping that somebody from here will tell government that we need to help our micro, small, and medium enterprises. They are not like big companies, they are small. That is, they contribute 40% to GDP. They employ more than 90% of those people employed in Kenya. So we need to do something better than we have done through fiscal measures. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Prof has taken us through business. Of course, he has a wealth of knowledge, so he's also focusing on ICT and the linkage to entrepreneurship and also SMEs. So I want to thank you so much, Prof, for taking your time.
I feel bad that I finish without saying that
yes,
life
Prof.
has changed. We have changed. We have moved to the fourth industrial revolution. Education does not mean going to university. It doesn't mean going to a physical building. We have so much online. I pride myself for doing coding by myself using the open free platforms. So you could actually very easily go to the highest level of education if you, irrespective of the certificates that you go for.
Thank you so much, Prof, for encouraging us to even increase our knowledge through the online opportunities that we have. We don't necessarily have to go into a classroom or a university to get education. There was a different course that someone was mentioning that we have. I think it was people who are educated but not informed. I can't paraphrase it, but it was a unique quote. Thank you, Prof. Let me also give this chance to Engineer Martha Chiruto to give us closing remarks.
Thank you, Amadi. First is, okay, I think I'll allow me to put on the two hats of being the part of the panelist and also being a KEPSA Deputy CEO. One is to appreciate everybody for accepting the invitation and participating in all this. The participants, you moderating, the panelists, and the information given the discussants, we truly appreciate everything. And as KEPSA and SIB, one of the things that we are asking everyone and pushing for is, can we all adopt a sustainability as a way of life in everything that we do, all the way from home to work, in our businesses, because we are working in this world currently, but we're building it for future generations. So we expect that when our children and our children's children come in, they can be happy with what we have done. The other thing is that as KEPSA, we also appreciate the feedback we've received, all the discussions here. We'll pick them up. We'll continue engaging government and all businesses to asking for more partnerships and collaborations, because we all want to have a sustainable economy, have growth, economic growth. And even during this pandemic, we're actually in discussions with government on how to save both lives and livelihoods. So one of the aspects that has come out critically is incorporating sustainability in everything we do. So we say thank you very much. Let's all promote Kenya. Let's buy Kenyan, build Kenya. The other thing that we've come in to learn is that we also need to take Kenya to the world. Therefore, we need to really promote our exports and at the same time bring the world to Kenya, because we are opening up our markets as time goes by, keeping in place all the protocols that we've developed and shared with government, and just continuing engaging with everybody. So thank you very much, and looking forward to more discussions in the future. Thank you, Amadi. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Engineer Martha. You've also had the opportunity to take us through utility management, both water and electricity. So, as I mentioned earlier, when I started the webinar, we had our partners who were able to facilitate this session. I would also want to thank them at the end. So we have CFS, that's the Committee on Physical Studies, and we have Kenya Private Sector Alliance, University of Nairobi, Sustainable Inclusive Business, Oxfam, FES, and OSIEA. So we want to appreciate them. Thank you so much. We will continue having more webinars under CFS and also as KEPSA and Sustainable Inclusive Business. We take this opportunity to thank each one of you who participated and also raising your questions through the chat room. So any question that was not answered during this webinar, we'll have it sent to the panelists and also the discussants, and they will be able to comment and write a reaction to the questions, and we'll be able to share this through different platforms. My name is Ebenezer Amadi. Thank you so much, and do have an amazing Thursday and Friday, and enjoy your weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.